not many Americans, in fact, not many Indians who know the fact that San Francisco is home to the first and oldest Hindu temple outside Asia in the Western world. And this temple was built by the Vedanta Society of Northern California, San Francisco, which was founded by Swami Vivekananda, who came to this country in 1893 to attend the Parliament of Religion in Chicago. The temple has been an enduring landmark in the spiritual landscape of this city of San Francisco for the last 112 years. The real history of the temple begins with the Parliament of Religions held in Chicago in 1893, when America was celebrating the 400th anniversary of Columbus' discovery of this continent. Swami Vivekananda, a great Hindu monk, came from India to represent Hinduism in that Parliament of Religions held in Chicago in the year 1893. He was a devoted disciple of the well-known Hindu saint of India, Sri Ramakrishna, who could be called and is actually considered to be the first great teacher of the harmony of religions in modern times. Swami Vivekananda introduced America to this ancient religion of Hinduism and to the Vedanta philosophy, which represents the most universal and the most spiritual teachings of Hindu religion. Vivekananda interpreted Vedanta as a universal spiritual humanism, embodying the principles of religious pluralism, multiculturalism, and spiritual universalism. His main focus was the essential unity and oneness of humanity. In fact, the oneness of the whole creation. In his lectures, he stressed again and again the idea of the divinity of all religions and the divinity of every human being, and the essential unity, oneness, and harmony of all religious traditions. In his opinion, the fact that all religions, irrespective of diversity in terms of culture, language, and nationality, have produced men and women we may call mystics of the most exalted character, endowed with qualities like purity, charity, and holiness, is a proof that all religions are equally acceptable and genuine paths leading to the one goal, namely God. And the experience of this God is the ultimate goal of all human endeavors in spiritual life. Another important message of Swami Vivekananda to the modern Western world was the divinity of man. This psychophysical mechanism, according to him, is only an insignificant aspect of our total personality. Behind our body, mind, and intellect is a divine soul, this Atman. In fact, this Atman is called God in many other non-Vedantic traditions, including popular Hinduism. And this Atman is immanent and omnipresent. It is the ever pure, immortal, divine spark present in all of us. This divinity is our true nature. Swamiji points out that the manifestation of this inner divinity should be the goal of all religious traditions. When we realize this unfoldment of our inner divinity, we become universal, broad-minded. Then we cannot hate anyone, we cannot do any harm to anyone. We look upon the whole humanity as one spiritual family. Every thought becomes a meditation, every act becomes an act of worship, and the whole humanity, the whole world becomes an expression of the divine. The spirit of Catholicity and toleration, the openness and generosity, which always distinguished as the central features of Hinduism were so forcefully presented by Vivekananda, brought to the attention of the most distinguished assembly of intellectuals of the 19th century in this country, that ever since till now, all serious students of Indian philosophy and all great students of India's spiritual tradition turn to the pages of Vivekananda for their light and inspiration. The all-inclusiveness of his approach made such a tremendous impact at this momentous event as the Parliament of Religion, which was historically the first gatherings of the delegates and representatives of different religions on a single platform. The credit for holding the first international gathering of all the representatives and delegates of world religions on a single platform goes to this new continent, the United States of America, which was celebrating the 400th anniversary of Columbus' discovery of this country. And Vivekananda used this as a platform for bringing the universal spiritual tradition of Hinduism to the attention of the whole world. After the Chicago Parliament of Religions, Swami Vivekananda traveled in many parts of the United States, spreading the message of Vedanta. The minister of the First Unitarian Church in Auckland, the Reverend Benjamin Fay Mills, wanted to hold a Congress of Religions in his church in Auckland. Mr. Mills had attended the Parliament of Religions in Chicago in 1893 and had the good fortune to listen to some of the lectures of Swami Vivekananda. He came to know that Vivekananda was in Southern California. So Reverend Mills invited him to speak on Vedanta in his church, that's the First Unitarian Church in Auckland. This was what brought Vivekananda to Northern California. Swamiji agreed, and before speaking in Auckland Unitarian Church, Vivekananda also gave a lecture on the ideal of a universal religion in Golden Gate Hall on Sutter Street, most probably in February in 1900. After preaching Vedanta for some years in America, Swami Vivekananda returned to India. He founded the Ramakrishna Order of Monks and the Ramakrishna Mission for Public Service. The twin organizations are founded in the name of his great teacher, Sri Ramakrishna, who verified in his own life, teachings and experience the ancient Vedic dictum that truth is one and it is universal, although it is described by many sages in so many different ways. It is expressed in the ancient Rigvedic mantra, Indram Mitram Varunam Agnirahu Adho Divyasa Suparno Gurutman Ekam Satvipraha Begudha Vadandi Agnim Yamam Matarishwanamako. Truth is one, God is one, the destiny, the destination, the supreme goal of all religious endeavors is one, but that truth could be called in so many different ways, in so many different cultures, depending upon the diversity of language, tradition and nationality. Now we are beginning the story of the old temple in San Francisco. After returning to India, Swami Vivekananda sent some of his fellow disciples to the West to spread the universal teachings of Vedanta. In fact, in 1900 itself, Vivekananda requested Swami Turiyananda to take up the work in Northern California. By this time, Vivekananda had become well known as the most prominent exponent of Vedanta philosophy and Hindu spirituality all over the Western world. First of all, he deputed Swami Turiyananda an austere ascetic monk of a traditional type, to found what was actually the first Vedic hermitage in the West, that is modeled on the ancient Vedic forest hermitages which may have existed around 4th or 5th millennium BC. This hermitage, known as Shanti Ashrama, was founded by Swami Tiriyananda in San Antonio Valley, a remote and sparsely populated land of forests and meadows. Later, Swami Vivekananda sent another Swami, another brother disciple, who was also a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. His name was Swami Tirunadhidananda. He arrived in San Francisco in the beginning of the year 1903. Swami Tirunadhidananda was specially handpicked by Swami Vivekananda for San Francisco work for some important reasons. He was the first among his brother disciples who appreciated Vivekananda's idea of service to God in man. Whatever we do as an act of service to our fellow human beings is an act of worship we offer to God. These are central teachings of Swami Vivekananda. And so the credit for building this temple, that is the Universal Hindu Temple of San Francisco, goes to Swami Tirunadhidananda, a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. On the evening of January 7th, 1906, Swami Tirunadhidananda dedicated what became well known as the first Hindu temple in the Western world, and invoked the Supreme Divine Spirit, the presence of God, which even today, 112 years later, is still a living presence in this holy place. It was built in an incredibly short time, within less than 5 months. The cornerstone was laid on 21st August 1905, and the temple was dedicated formally on January the 7th, 1906. We should remember, we took almost 3 years for the renovation work, and at the beginning of 20th century, Swami Tirunadhidananda built this temple within less than 5 months. Now, something about the Hindu temple and its tradition. A temple in Hinduism is a symbol of the omnipresent and transcendental dimensions of God. But this temple is much more than that. This temple embodies the design of the building, symbols of major world religions, all grouped artistically together to emphasize their compatibility and ultimate unity. You can see the portraits inside. The portraits and pictures in the auditorium of the temple give a vivid presentation of Swami Tirunadhidananda's unique concept of bridging the spiritual traditions of East and the West. It is a visual symbol of interfaith harmony and a common ground between different religious traditions of the world, incorporating stylistic features from Eastern and Western traditions in culture, in religion, and in spirituality. The large portraits of Sri Ramakrishna, the portrait of Buddha, and a painting of Christ as a yogi loudly proclaim to the world the central message of the Vedas, which embraces the ideals of universalism. Ekam sat vipra bahudha vadanti, the well-known Vedic statement. The builder of the temple was as original as the temple he built. It will be very interesting for us to have a look at the special characteristics of this great saint that enabled him to build this unique temple, which he conceived to be an attempt to bridge the East and West, a cultural and spiritual bridge. Swami Tirunadhidananda lived up to the Vedantic ideal that all religions are so many paths leading to the same goal, namely God, and that the whole humanity is one spiritual family. Of course, this was the very essence of the teachings of his great Guru Sri Ramakrishna. This is also the essence of the teachings of the Vedic traditions which Sri Ramakrishna embodied and Vivekananda preached. This temple, now rebuilt, strengthened and expanded, is thus a fitting expression of the traditional Hindu religious viewpoint, which emphasizes not only tolerance of different religious viewpoints, but also the acceptance of them all as being different expressions of the same universal truth. That is, humanity is one, creation is one, existence is one. When we look beyond the apparent differences, you can find the same divine reality present everywhere in everything. The temple which Vivekananda described in his own words as the best of India planted permanently on American soil symbolizes all that was sublime and spiritual in the teachings of the Vedas, in the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, Sri Sharada Devi, the Holy Mother, and Swami Vivekananda. And these teachings constitute the very essence of the thousands of years of spiritual evolution of Indian civilization and Hindu religion. In the history of Hinduism, especially after the Vedic age, temples were centers of religious life. But conventional temple worship did not have anything to do with religious pluralism and universalism as understood today. Here is where we find Swami Trigunadithananda as a great innovator, as a pathfinder in the concept of temple building. Credit should go to Swami Trigunadithananda for giving a universal dimension to the very concept of temple worship by building the Hindu temple in San Francisco that stood as a picturesque spiritual and cultural landscape in the city for the last 112 years. This temple is a sacred place for the Ramakrishna order of monks, which is historically a continuation of India's ancient monastic heritage, which produced such great spiritual pathfinders and philosophers like Buddha and Shankaracharya. It may be interesting for many of you to know that Buddha also originally belonged to the tradition of Hindu monasticism, but later he started his own dispensation, which later became a separate religious tradition called Buddhism. This is a living monument. This temple is a living monument to the ideals of interfaith harmony and religious universalism. That's where we find Swami Trigunadithananda's concept and the relevance of his temple to our own times. Swami Trigunadithananda's universal Hindu temple was built as a symbol of the great Vedantic ideal that ultimate reality is one, and anyone belonging to any tradition, any nationality, any culture can reach his spiritual destiny, his spiritual goal, if he is sincere, truthful and earnest and lead a pure life. From this perspective, every religion represents an expression of the same one eternal, transcendental, spiritual truth. This integral view of the ultimate reality and the diverse human attempts to reach that goal as taught by the Vedas and by Sri Ramakrishna and Vivekananda formed the philosophical and spiritual symbolism of the Hindu temple of San Francisco. Now, something very interesting about the history of the temple. What happened in San Francisco just a few months after the temple was dedicated? Miraculously, the temple survived the catastrophic San Francisco earthquake and fire of April 1906 without any serious damages. The fire had in fact reached very close to the temple, to within 6 blocks of the temple, before suddenly being diverted by a providential reversal of wind direction. To those who knew Swami Tirugunadithananda, the builder of the temple, this would be no surprise. He had always felt that there was a divine hand and a divine plan behind the construction of the temple. He considered himself to be an instrument in the hands of God. Swami Tirugunadithananda had experienced this spiritual reality as a fact. He had revealed this from time to time. On one such occasion, he said, regarding his motivation in building this first Hindu temple in the West. I am quoting Swami Tirugunadithananda's words after he had dedicated this Hindu temple on January the 7th in 1906. He says, believe me, if there is the least tinge of selfishness in building this temple, it will fall. But if it is the master's work, it will stand. And it is no surprise this temple withstood the great earthquake and fire of San Francisco in 1906. The Universal Hindu Temple of San Francisco has a special significance in the present age, which is characterized by a widespread urge for anything universal, anything broad-minded. Unity in variety is the theme of our times. This urge for universality, especially in the field of spirituality and religion, is bound to prompt thinking people everywhere to study the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna and his ideal of universal religious harmony, symbolized in the Universal Hindu Temple of San Francisco. The story of the Universal Temple of San Francisco, the Hindu Temple of San Francisco, is not just the story of a temple. It is the story of the spiritual saga of a saint, a humbling, inspiring model for all spiritual seekers. For those who revere this ancient tradition of Hinduism and Vedanta, this is a holy place because of the great sacrifices in the name of those great ideals that have been made here by those who lived and worshipped here, especially because of this temple's association with the great Hindu saint Swami Tirugunadithananda, who made this enduring contribution to the cultural and religious landscape to this beautiful city of San Francisco, and thereby enriched this great nation of America. Thank you. You are most welcome to come to this temple. I heartily welcome you all. Thank you. Namaskar.